there, friends. This is Rebecca here, your friendly neighborhood dragon librarian from Farmington Community Library. And I've got Dewey, my special dragon friend, with me today that was made for me by one of my wonderful patron families. And we have a very special video today. It's one that I like to do every year around this time. So we've got Thanksgiving this week, right? So this is a time of year where a lot of us are thinking about some of the things that we are very grateful for or very thankful for. And I know right off the bat, some of the easiest things to think of are friends and family, our health, our pets, stuff like that. And those things are all wonderful, but I also really like to think about some of the literary things that I'm most thankful for. Because, I mean, yes, I'm a librarian, obviously, but I'm constantly thinking about books and reading and how much all of this means to me. So this time of year, it really just is so important to me to think about some of the things that I love. And that can usually mean like a specific author or a specific book or book series, or even just a specific genre that I love to read or that I enjoy to read. So this year I wanted to talk about a specific author, but she falls within the bigger scope of authors that I depend on, that I can depend on for coming out with consistently phenomenal books. That sounds like very specific, very niche, right? But think about it. Do you have an author in your life that you know every time they come out with a new book that you're going to love it no matter what it's about? And maybe every one of those books is very different from each other, which is absolutely the case with this author. All of them are so very different from each other, completely unique, but they all have just blown me away. So she has a new book that just recently came out. I was very, very lucky to receive an ARC of this book when I was at the library conference over the summer. So I read it very quickly then, voraciously, but then read it a second time when it just recently came out and fell in love with it even more than I did the first time. This author is so, so, so incredible. Everything she writes is amazing, and I'm just really, really thankful and grateful for her. And that author that I want to talk about is Alix Harrow. Now, she primarily writes fantasy books, but the fantasy varies greatly. So the first book I read from her was The 10,000 Doors of January, which is absolutely phenomenal. She's got another one called The Once and Future Witches. She's got another one. This one is called Fractured Fables, and it's actually a couple novellas that she has written that they put together into one book. So it's like very fairy tale reimagined. And then she's got another one that came out recently called Starling House, which is very, very popular too, which had some darker themes, more gothic undertones, stuff like that. So she writes a lot about fantasy, but very urban fantasy sometimes, things that take place in our world. She writes a lot about fairy tales, stuff like that. So if you are looking for a book that is different and maybe has some magical realism to it, but is still set, you know, in this time period or in this day and age, in this world, you might want to try one of her books. Now, her very newest book, like I said, just recently came out, and it's called The Everlasting. The Everlasting. Now, I met her when I had my advanced reader's copy signed over the summer when I met her at the conference, and I just basically gushed all over her and told her how much I love all her works and things like that. And she's very gracious and kind. So another thing I'm thankful for is authors who are very gracious and kind to their readers, because not all of them are. And sometimes if you meet one and they're not great, it can be very heartbreaking. But I can attest to that Alix Harrow is she's an amazing person and very kind and very sweet to her readers. So this is her newest book, and this book has completely rearranged what I'm thinking about as my favorite fantasy books of the year, because I sort of had a general idea of what they were going to be, and then I read this and it threw all of that to the wind, and I don't know what I'm going to do now with that list. But we'll find out about that in January. We're not worrying about it now. But anyway, I'm here to tell you about this book and why I'm thankful for it and why I think you should read it immediately. So first of all, this book is a fantasy, yes. Maybe fantasy is not your go-to genre, but I don't think that matters. I think anyone can and will not only enjoy this book, but just absolutely adore it. So one of the things that Alix Harrow does that I love, even though all her books are very, very different in terms of tone, in terms of story, she writes these really strong, fiercely independent female characters. And they're all just fantastic in different ways. And they're not perfect characters, right? Like, some of them are very, very deeply flawed, broken people. But they manage to be characters that you just absolutely love and that you keep rooting for. So this is about the story about a famous knight named Una the Everlasting. And she is basically, in this world, this land called Dominion, she is like the hero of Dominion. There's all these books written about her, these courageous tales about how she pulled this sword out of the tree and, you know, rescued the young queen from kidnappers and basically became the hero of the land. And all these propaganda posters are made about her, all these children's books, all these songs, everything is made about this Una the Everlasting. So not only does she inspire the entire world of Dominion, but she also inspires our main character, whose name is Owen, who ends up being inspired to go to war, you know, to join the war efforts because of how he just completely falls in love with her story. Doesn't really do really great at that, so he becomes a scholar and starts chasing her origin story. He's just totally obsessed. And then he ends up crossing paths with Una in a way that you really would not expect. So not only do they meet, but the story keeps getting repeated over and over and over again, and they have to figure out, I'm trying to say this without any spoilers. They basically have to try to close the loop, right? And figure out how the story ends. So yes, this is a star-crossed lovers story. This is a story about how the characters from mythology, or even if you were to look at like historical figures, how their stories get warped and changed as time goes on. How we view these people now may not be how they really were, right? Really interesting things like that. And this is just, everything that she writes has this whisper of whimsy woven through it that I think is just absolutely amazing. I love whimsy. Her writing style is just so absolutely beautiful, but also, yeah, there's a little bit of fun whimsy in it too, where even when you're reading about like really serious topics or themes, you're enjoying it, you're smiling, you're having a really fun time also. This book is not very long. It's definitely under 400 pages, I believe. Yeah, it's really honestly not even very much past 300 pages. So it's a shorter read. So if you're looking to dip your toes in the fantasy genre, but you don't really want to jump into a whole huge world building thing, this one is really easy to read. This is a great book for first-time fantasy fans, but it's also a great book for people who devour fantasy all the time. Like I said, I absolutely loved it and thought it was fantastic. So this book was beautiful. I've read it twice in the span of a couple months. I love it. It's definitely going to be among some of my favorites of the year. Everything she writes is just absolutely incredible, like I said, and I'm really thankful for her. That is who I am very particularly grateful for this season of thankfulness, is authors that you can depend on to consistently write stories that are amazing. They never let you down in a world that is very uncertain and scary and ever-changing. So thankful for authors that are always there for us to deliver a phenomenal story every time. The Everlasting by Alix Harrow. So I want to know about what some of the literary things that you are most thankful for, whether that be an author or a book series or even just a particular genre. Let me know in the comments. I really love to chat with you about it and hear what you guys think. Thank you so very much for watching. In addition to all of the things in the world to be thankful for, I'm also very thankful for you and for you watching. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.